The choice that changed everything. The hover limo descended through New Sao Paulo's neon-lit atmosphere, its chrome surface reflecting the city's towering spires. Elena Montter pressed her palm against the cool window, watching the world she'd known all her life grow smaller beneath her. In 3 hours, she would make a choice that would either destroy her or set her free. The Montter family dinner table stretched like a battlefield beneath crystal chandeliers. 23 relatives sat in judgment, their faces carved from disapproval and tradition. At the head sat Augustus Montter, patriarch of the galaxy's most powerful terraforming dynasty, his steel-gray eyes fixed on his daughter. Mathis Kane, he spat the name like poison. A Tyrannian farmer with debts exceeding his land's worth. This is your grand romance, Elena. Elena's heterochromatic eyes, one blue like Earth's oceans, one brown like alien soil, met her father's gaze without flinching. He's the most honest man I've ever met. Her brother Richard laughed bitterly. Honest and poor. How romantic. Our great-grandfather started with nothing but soil under his fingernails, Elena shot back. Or have we forgotten how the Montter fortune really began? The table fell silent. Augustus's jaw tightened. That was different. He built an empire. Your farmer maintains debts. With the right investment. Enough. Augustus slammed his fist down, making crystal glasses sing. You have one choice, Elena. Abandon this foolishness and take your rightful place as my heir, or leave this family with nothing. Not one credit. Elena looked around the table. Her mother's eyes pleaded silently. Thomas, her younger brother, looked torn between loyalty and love. The uncles and cousins watched like vultures. But stronger than their expectations was the memory of Mathis' calloused hands holding hers as they watched Tyrannis IV's twin sunsets, speaking of dreams that had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with building something real together. Elena stood slowly, removing the emerald ring that marked her as the Montter heir. She placed it gently on the polished table. I choose love, she said simply. The silence followed her to the door. No one moved to stop her. Only her mother's gaze, equal parts heartbreak and secret pride, accompanied her into the night. At the spaceport, Mathis waited by his small cargo ship, his green skin pale with worry. When he saw her tear-stained face, he knew. They gave you an ultimatum, he said. Elena nodded, stepping into his arms. And I chose you. I chose us. You don't have to do this, he whispered against her hair. You can still go back. She silenced him with a kiss. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. As their ship lifted off toward the outer colonies, Elena watched Earth shrink to a blue dot behind them. She was leaving behind unimaginable wealth, but gaining something far more precious, the freedom to choose her own destiny. Little did she know that destiny would prove far stranger and more dangerous than either of them could imagine. Love in the alien soil. Tyrannis IV's red soil stained Elena's designer boots as she took her first steps on what would become her new home. The modest farmhouse looked nothing like the orbital mansions she'd known, but something about the honest simplicity of it made her heart sing. It's not much, Mathis said, his voice uncertain as he watched her survey the property. It's perfect, Elena replied, meaning every word. It's ours. The first months tested every fiber of her privileged upbringing. Her hands, once soft and manicured, developed calluses from working the hydroponic gardens. Her back ached from feeding the livestock. Her Harvard-trained mind had to learn the rhythms of crops and seasons instead of corporate quarters and profit margins. But there was joy in the struggle. Each morning, she woke to Mathis' gentle kiss and the song of alien birds. Each evening, they sat on their small porch, planning improvements to the farm while watching the spectacular double sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. I never thought I'd see a Montter with dirt under her nails, Mathis teased one evening, examining her work-worn hands. I never thought I'd feel so accomplished watching something I planted grow into food, Elena laughed, her sun-bronzed face glowing with contentment. 3 months into their new life, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and terror, joy at the miracle of new life, terror at bringing children into their uncertain financial situation. "We'll make it work," Mathis promised, holding her close as she shared the news. "Our children will grow up knowing love matters more than money." But their happiness was short-lived. The farm's debts proved worse than Mathis had initially revealed. Equipment failures mounted. The creditors began making threatening calls. "I should have told you everything before," Mathis confessed one night, the weight of unpaid bills spread across their kitchen table. "We're in this together," Elena said firmly. "I didn't marry your bank account." That night, Elena's business mind went to work. She researched agricultural grants, sustainable farming techniques, and market opportunities for their unique position near Tyranny's 4's mineral-rich aquifers. By dawn, she had a plan. "We're not just going to save this farm," she told Mathis over breakfast. "We're going to transform it into something extraordinary." Over the following weeks, Elena threw herself into her new project with the same intensity she'd once applied to corporate mergers. She negotiated with suppliers, applied for grants, and designed an innovative irrigation system that would revolutionize farming on Tyranny's 4. But as her pregnancy progressed, strange things began to happen. The crops in sections where she worked most often grew faster and stronger than the others. Animals seemed drawn to her, following her around the farm with unusual devotion. And sometimes, late at night, she swore she could hear something singing in the wind, something that sounded almost like dragons. "It's just the pregnancy affecting your imagination," Mathis assured her when she mentioned the singing. But his eyes held a worry he couldn't quite hide. As Elena's belly grew round with their child, or children, as the medical scans revealed she was carrying twins, the farm began to flourish in ways that defied explanation. Their success attracted attention from neighboring farms and even some interest from off-world agricultural corporations. But it also attracted other attention. Ships had been spotted in the outer system, unmarked vessels that appeared and disappeared without explanation. And twice, Elena woke in the night with the strangest feeling that someone was watching their home from the darkness. "Maybe we should send word to your family," Mathis suggested one evening as they watched another mysterious ship's lights disappear behind the moons. "Let them know you're safe." Elena shook her head, her hands protective over her swelling belly. "They made their choice. We made ours." But as she felt the twins moving restlessly within her, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their story was about to take a turn none of them could predict. Part 3, Secrets Born in Fire. The twins were born during Tyranny's 4's storm season, when lightning split the sky and thunder shook the foundations of their modest farmhouse. But it wasn't the weather that made their birth extraordinary, it was what happened when they drew their first breaths. Elena gasped as she held her newborn daughter, Lyra, in her arms. The baby's eyes weren't the expected brown or blue, but a shifting gold that seemed to contain flecks of fire. Moments later, when Mathis placed their son Marcus in her other arm, she saw the same impossible golden eyes looking back at her. "The medical scanner must have been wrong," the midwife muttered, checking her instruments. "These readings, they're not showing human DNA markers." Elena and Mathis exchanged worried glances. What were their children? The answer came 3 months later, on the night everything changed forever. Elena woke to the sound of engines overhead, not the familiar hum of agricultural transports, but the deeper roar of military-grade fighters. Through their bedroom window, she saw armed figures surrounding their home, their black armor reflecting the moonlight. "Mathis," she whispered urgently, shaking him awake. "We have company." The front door exploded inward before they could react. Soldiers poured into their home, weapons raised, their faces hidden behind tactical visors. Behind them strode a figure Elena recognized with a chill of horror, her brother Richard, dressed in the uniform of a corporate enforcement officer. "Hello, sister," he said coldly. "Did you really think you could hide forever?" "Get out of my house," Elena snarled, clutching her babies protectively. Richard laughed. "Your house? This pathetic farm that's about to be repossessed?" "I don't think so." His eyes fell on the twins, and his expression shifted to something hungry and calculating. But those children, they're coming with me. Over my dead body, Mathis growled, stepping between Richard and his family. That can be arranged, Richard replied, nodding to his men. The soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, something extraordinary happened. The twins began to cry, not the normal wail of frightened infants, but a sound that resonated with power. The windows of the house exploded outward. The soldiers stumbled, their equipment sparking and failing. And from somewhere in the darkness beyond the farm, something answered their call. The roar that split the night was unlike anything heard on Tyrannies, for 1,000 years. It was followed by another, then another, until the sky itself seemed to vibrate with ancient power. Impossible, Richard breathed, his face pale with shock. Through the broken windows came creatures of legend, dragons, their scales gleaming silver and gold in the moonlight, their eyes burning with intelligence and fury. They descended from the storm clouds like avenging angels, their wings casting enormous shadows across the farm. The largest dragon, a magnificent silver beast the size of a small ship, landed directly in front of the farmhouse. When it spoke, its voice resonated in everyone's minds simultaneously. The heirs have awakened, it said, its ancient voice filled with wonder. After a millennium of waiting, the dragon seed bloodline lives again. Elena stared in shock. Dragon seed? The dragon's great head turned toward her, its eyes kind despite their intimidating size. Your grandmother's grandmother carried the ancient blood, child. It has slept in your family line for generations, waiting for the right combination of circumstances to awaken. Your children are the first dragon lords born in 1,000 years. Richard's soldiers had backed away in terror, but he himself stood frozen, caught between greed and fear. The children belong to the Montter family, he declared, though his voice shook. Our father has legal claim. Your father forfeited all claim when he cast out the mother, the dragon replied. But more than that, no mortal law supersedes the ancient compact. These children belong to the sky, the storm, and the flame. They will be raised as they choose, by those who love them. As if to emphasize the point, 3 more dragons landed around the farmhouse, their combined presence making the very air thrum with power. Elena felt a strange certainty fill her as she looked at her children, then at the magnificent creatures who had come to protect them. We can't stay here, she said to Mathis. They'll never stop hunting us. The silver dragon lowered its great head to her level. There are sanctuary worlds, young mother. Places where your children can grow and learn their heritage safely. Will you trust us to take you there? Elena looked at Mathis, saw the same determination in his eyes that she felt in her heart. They had given up everything once for love. Now they would do it again for their children's future. We'll go, she said. As they gathered their few precious belongings, Richard called out desperately, Elena, you don't understand what you're doing. Father can protect you. Like he protected me when he threw me out. Elena replied without looking back. Tell Augustus Montter that his grandchildren are beyond his reach now. And they'll remain so until they're strong enough to make their own choices about the Montter legacy. Within minutes, they were airborne, carried away from their humble farm by creatures of myth and legend. As Elena watched Tyrannies, for shrink below them, she wondered what kind of life awaited her children among the dragons. She couldn't know that in 5 years' time, she would return to reclaim everything that had been taken from them, and more. The Dragon Mother's return. 5 years had transformed Elena Montter from a privileged heiress into something far more formidable. Standing on the command deck of the Dragon's Breath, a ship that existed in the space between legend and reality, she watched the familiar outline of New Sao Paulo grow larger through the viewport. But she was no longer the heartbroken young woman who had fled into exile. Her children, now 5 years old, stood beside her. Lyra had inherited her mother's heterochromatic eyes, but with an inner fire that made them seem to glow. Marcus possessed his father's quiet strength, but with an intensity that spoke of dragons in his blood. Both children wore simple clothes that couldn't hide the aura of power that surrounded them like an invisible flame. Mama, is that where you grew up? Lyra asked, her small hand finding Elena's. Yes, sweetheart. But it's different now. We're different now. Behind them, Mathis approached, his green skin bearing new scars from their years among the dragon clans. He had become a formidable warrior and diplomat, helping to bridge the gap between his own people and the ancient dragons who had become their protectors and teachers. The dragons report that Augustus has called for a family gathering, he said quietly. All the Montter holdings are represented. He must have sensed something. Elena smiled, but it wasn't the gentle expression of her youth. This smile held teeth. He's about to sense a lot more. The past 5 years had been an education unlike any university could provide. On the hidden world of Drakmor, Elena had learned that her family's fortune was built on more than just terraforming technology. The Montter bloodline carried the genetic markers of the ancient dragonlords, a fact that Augustus had discovered and hidden, using their inherent abilities to manipulate planetary ecosystems while keeping the source of their power secret. But Elena had embraced what her father had tried to suppress. Under the tutelage of the elder dragons, she had learned to channel the ancient power in her blood. More importantly, she had learned the truth about why her father had really banished her, not for loving an alien, but because he feared what her children might become. The Montter family controls 7 terraforming corporations across 12 star systems, Elena explained to her children as their ship entered Earth's atmosphere. They've used their hidden abilities to amass wealth and power for generations, all while denying their true nature. And grandfather doesn't want us to know about the dragons? Marcus asked, his young voice serious beyond his years. Your grandfather is afraid of what you represent, Elena replied. You're the first generation in 1,000 years to be born with the full awakening of Dragonlord powers. You don't need to hide what you are. The dragon's breath settled onto the private landing pad of the Montter orbital mansion with a grace that defied its massive size. Through the ship's transparent hull, the assembled family members could see the passengers disembarking, but what they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. Elena walked down the ramp with regal confidence, her simple traveling clothes somehow making her appear more royal than any of her relatives in their expensive formal wear. Beside her, Mathis moved with the deadly grace of a trained warrior. But it was the children who caused gasps of shock and recognition. Lyra and Marcus walked hand in hand, their golden eyes surveying the mansion with curious intelligence. But it wasn't just their eyes that marked them as different, it was the way small objects around them seemed to respond to their presence, floating slightly or glowing with inner light, and the way the air itself seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Behind them came Elena's true escorts, 3 dragons in human form, their true nature visible only in their slitted pupils and the way reality seemed to bend slightly around them. Augustus Montter waited at the mansion's entrance, flanked by Richard and Thomas, along with a dozen other family members. His face was a mask of controlled shock as he watched his daughter approach. Elena, he said carefully. You look, well. I look like what I was always meant to be, Elena replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal windows of the mansion ring softly. I look like a dragon lord who's finally stopped hiding. You don't understand the danger, Augustus began. I understand perfectly, Elena cut him off. I understand that you've been using our family's bloodline abilities to manipulate ecosystems and terraform worlds while keeping the source of that power secret. I understand that you banished me not because I fell in love with an alien, but because you were terrified of what my children might become. She gestured to Lyra and Marcus, who stood calmly despite being surrounded by adults who were staring at them with mixtures of awe and fear. Meet your grandchildren, father. The first true dragon lords born in a millennium. They're here to reclaim their birthright. Augustus's face went pale. Elena, you can't possibly understand the consequences. The consequences? Elena's laugh was like silver bells mixed with dragon fire. The consequences of finally stopping the lies. Of finally acknowledging what we really are. She raised her hand, and throughout the mansion, every piece of crystal and glass began to sing in harmony. Plants in the gardens burst into bloom. The very air became charged with power. The dragons are returning to the galaxy, Father. The ancient accords are being renewed. And the Montter family can either embrace their true heritage. Her eyes flashed gold like her children's. Or be left behind by it. The family members stared in stunned silence as Elena's demonstration of power faded. But before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the mansion. What's happening? Richard demanded. Thomas, checking his datapad, looked up with wide eyes. 7 of our terraforming operations have just been completed simultaneously. Projects that should have taken decades finished in minutes. The ecological transformations are perfect, better than anything we've ever achieved. Elena smiled. A small gift from the Dragon Council. Consider it a demonstration of what's possible when you stop fighting your nature and start embracing it. She looked around at her assembled family, some frightened, some angry, some beginning to show the first glimmers of understanding. I'm not here for revenge, she said, her voice gentle but implacable. I'm here to offer you a choice. The same choice you once forced on me, but with a difference. This time, choosing love and truth leads to more power than you ever imagined, not less. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice, Elena's mother, Elena, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation. I want to meet my grandchildren, she said quietly, stepping forward with tears in her eyes. Properly, this time. It was the first crack in the wall of opposition, but Elena knew it wouldn't be the last. The real test was yet to come. Legacy of Fire and Stars. The great hall of the Montter mansion had been transformed into something between a family reunion and a cosmic summit. Dragons in their magnificent true forms perched on reinforced balconies, their ancient eyes watching the proceedings with interest. The family members sat in a circle, with Elena and her children at the center, no longer as outcasts but as the inheritors of a legacy that stretched back to the stars themselves. Augustus Montter looked older than his years as he faced his daughter and grandchildren. The demonstrations of power he'd witnessed over the past 3 days had shattered his worldview completely. Watching 5-year-old Lyra casually heal a withered garden with a touch, or seeing Marcus communicate telepathically with a dragon, had forced him to confront truths he'd spent decades denying. The Galactic Council has been watching our family for generations, Elena explained, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned to speak for dragons. They know about the Dragon Lord bloodline. They know about our abilities. The only reason they haven't intervened is because the dragons vouched for us, believing we would eventually embrace our true nature. And if we don't? Richard asked, though his voice had lost its earlier hostility. The past few days had humbled him considerably. Then the council will remove the Montter family from all terraforming operations, Elena replied simply. Our contracts will be voided. Our licenses revoked. Our assets frozen. We'll be stripped of everything we've built, unless we can prove we're worthy of the power we've been wielding. She gestured to the dragons surrounding them. The dragons are offering us a new compact. Full partnership in terraforming operations, with their knowledge and power supporting our efforts. In return, we acknowledge our heritage and train the next generation properly. Lyra tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, can I show them the star song? Elena smiled and nodded. The little girl stepped forward, her golden eyes closing in concentration. She began to hum, a melody that seemed to come from the void between stars. As she sang, holographic images appeared in the air around them, solar systems being born, planets forming, life taking root and flourishing across the galaxy. The dragons taught us that terraforming isn't just about changing atmospheres and soil composition, Elena explained as her daughter's song painted visions of cosmic beauty. It's about understanding the music of creation itself. The Dragon Lords were the first to learn this song, and they've been waiting for us to remember it. Marcus stepped forward to join his sister, his voice harmonizing with hers. As the twins sang together, the very air in the hall seemed to shimmer with possibility. Plants throughout the mansion began to bloom, their growth accelerated but perfectly healthy. The crystal windows resonated with the melody, creating a symphony of light and sound that brought tears to many eyes. When the song ended, the silence was profound. Even the dragons seemed moved by the display. "This is what we're choosing between," Elena said quietly. "Hiding from our nature and slowly losing everything we've built, or embracing who we truly are and becoming more than we ever imagined." Augustus looked around the circle of family members, seeing the awe and wonder in their faces. When his eyes met Elena's, she saw something she hadn't expected: pride. "I was wrong," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I was so afraid of losing control, of things changing, that I couldn't see the miracle we were being offered." He looked at his grandchildren, who watched him with the patient wisdom of children who had been raised among dragons. "Elena, can you forgive a foolish old man who was too proud to see the truth?" Elena rose and walked to her father, taking his hands in hers. "There's nothing to forgive, Papa. You were protecting the family the only way you knew how. But now we have a better way." The reconciliation was interrupted by Thomas, who had been monitoring communications from the family's various holdings. "The terraforming operations aren't just running smoothly," he reported with excitement. "They're producing results that are exceeding all projections. The Martian atmosphere project that was supposed to take another century just achieved breathable air levels. The Tau Ceti water reclamation that was failing is now producing surplus fresh water." One of the dragons, still in human form, spoke up. "When dragon lords work in harmony with dragon song, the results transcend normal physical limitations. Your family's operations can become the most successful in the galaxy, not through exploitation but through partnership with the natural forces of creation." Over the following weeks, the Montter family underwent a transformation that paralleled their terraforming projects. Those who chose to embrace their heritage began training with the dragons, learning to channel their abilities consciously rather than instinctively. Those who couldn't adapt were given generous settlements and wished well, but they were no longer part of the family's core operations. Elena found herself at the center of it all, no longer the banished daughter but the bridge between the old ways and the new. She worked alongside Mathis, who had become the family's chief liaison with the dragon clans, and watched with pride as her children grew into their remarkable abilities. "Do you ever regret it?" Mathis asked one evening as they stood on the mansion's observation deck, watching their children play with young dragons in the garden below. Elena considered the question, thinking of the frightened young woman who had once chosen love over fortune. "I regret the years we lost," she said finally. "But I don't regret the choice. Every difficult step led us to this moment." The twins were 5 years old now, but they spoke with the wisdom of ages and commanded the respect of creatures who had lived for millennia. Under their influence, the Montter family had evolved from a corporate dynasty into something unprecedented, a bridge between humanity and the ancient races that had once ruled the stars. "Mama, Papa," Lyra called out, running toward them with her brother close behind. "The elder dragon wants to know if we can visit the singing nebula next week. She says it's time for us to learn the deep songs." Elena exchanged a look with Mathis, both of them marveling at how their children spoke of interstellar travel and cosmic mysteries as casually as other children might discuss playground games. "We'll have to ask your grandfather," Elena replied. "He's the head of the family, after all." "Actually," came Augustus's voice from behind them, "I think it's time to discuss succession." He joined them on the observation deck, his eyes twinkling with newfound vitality. "I've been thinking that perhaps it's time for someone with actual Dragonlord training to take over the family operations." Elena stared at her father in shock. "Papa, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Augustus replied. "You've proven yourself in ways I never imagined possible. You've brought our family into a new age, literally. The leadership should be yours." As the twin suns of Earth's system set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that rivaled dragon scales, Elena felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. But it was a good weight, the weight of possibilities rather than burdens. "Then let's build something worthy of the dragon's trust," she said, taking Mathis' hand while their children played with creatures of legend in the garden below. "Let's build a future that honors both our heritage and our love." The Montter family had begun as terraformers, shaping worlds to suit human needs. Now they would become something more, gardeners of the galaxy, working in harmony with ancient powers to nurture life throughout the stars. And at the center of it all, two 5-year-old twins who carried the blood of dragons in their veins, representing the hope of a future where love and power could coexist, where family bonds could span species and star systems, and where the choice between fortune and heart no longer had to be made. The dragons had returned to the galaxy, and with them, magic had returned to the universe. The end.